Yes, sir. Harrison. Here's a plant. I'll repeat the question.
What knowledge did you have about record labels growing up, if any?
What knowledge did I have about record labels when I was growing up? If any, none whatsoever. And when I started a label in 1980, none whatsoever. No fucking clue. What I did know was that I was in a band called the Teen Idols that I played bass. We formed in December of '79. We played until our last show was in November of 1980. And when we broke up, we had in a cigar box about $700. This is all the money we'd ever made. We made about $50 or $60 a night. We saved everything. And we had a demo tape. Now, when we broke up, we could have split the money 4 ways, but that just sort of seemed like, here's $150. Or we could document something that was really very important to us, because the band was something that we were very serious about, the music was serious, the community of friends, the punk kids, it was very, very serious. So we thought, well, we want to document this. If people want to, if people are interested, great. If they're not interested, that's fine, we don't care. We knew nothing about record labels. We had a friend who worked at a record store called Yesterday and Today. He had put out some records, so we called him up and said, how do you put out a record? He goes, well, here's the number for the pressing plant. So we called these people up, they said, send us a tape and send us some money. So we sent them the tape, enough money for, and we sent them enough money for 1,000 7-inch records. Then we took what we called picture sleeves. This is, you have to remember in the 70s, American 45s were all just big hole 45s, and these paper sleeves with, didn't have any graphics on them. But the British singles had picture sleeves, and all the punk stuff had these great picture sleeves, so we wanted to emulate that. So we carefully pulled one apart to try to understand how it was constructed. And if you can imagine, it's a 7-inch, so if you pull it apart, it's 14 inches, right? 7 inches wide, 14 inches, with little flaps that you fold over and you glue. So we opened everything up and we put it down on an 11 by 14 piece of paper, and we just traced the outline of this. And then Jeff Nelson, who was the drummer of the Teen Idols and is still the co-founder and co-owner of Discord Records, sat down and put graphics, Teen Idol cover. We try to make it the coolest fucking cover of all time, inside the lines. Then we went to a neighborhood print shop and we said, can you make 1,000 of these? And they gave us 1,000 11 by 14 pieces of paper with this shape. And then we sat down with a pair of scissors, and this was a mistake, rubber cement. Don't use rubber cement. And we cut, folded, and glued every one of those records. And that's what we did for the first 10,000 records in Discord. And and let me tell you something, you've heard the record industry, and that is the fucking record industry. All right? So, we had no idea. We're from Washington, D.C. There was no music business in Washington, D.C. We had no idea. We didn't, and also, we are punks, and we don't care about the music business. We were just making records. So we then looked up, we had our friends in town, and we went to record stores, and then we knew about certain record stores. We'd go maybe up to New York, and there was a couple record stores, and going you want to buy a record? $1, and they'd say, we'll take 5 on consignment. Come on, $5. They wish they bought them now. And then there was a few fanzines. There was a few, we looked at fanzines from around the country. There were some really notable ones. Maximum Rock and Roll. Maximum Rock and Roll was not out yet, but Flipside. And then there was one from the Midwest called Touch and Go. We had found, these little zines we'd found, and we sent copies of the records to these people because we felt they were kin. And it just started to develop a friendship and a scene. And that's the beginning. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. That was a great answer.
Oh, he says a good answer. Thank you. Hold on. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What's going on with Fugazi?
What's going on with Fugazi? What sense of the word do you mean? What is Fugazi doing? We are on an indefinite hiatus. We have been on indefinite. We have played our last show on November 2nd, 2002, so it's close to 10 years since we played our last show. We did not break up because it seemed insane to say we broke up, because we are a family. They're my closest friends and constantly in touch. We are involved in each other's lives constantly. I think that stores can go out of business. Fugazi's not a store. Minor Threat, that band broke up. We fucking fought and hated each other at the end, like, fuck you, fuck you. But they're also my friends, so it's cool, it's good, everything's beautiful. I have no idea. People ask me about Fugazi, I don't know what to tell you. It's just, it is we reserve the right to do whatever the fuck we damn well please. That's the deal with Fugazi. And I think that, we do, like we just did the website, we've been working on this project, it's Fugazi Live Series. We played, I think, 1,100 shows. Of those 1,100, we personally recorded about 850 of them.
That's 2 years in, right?
Yeah. We had this vast collection of recordings, and they've been sitting in my closet at Discord House, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm not gonna listen to them. We gotta figure out something to do with them, and along came the internet, which actually made it a possibility. So we created a website which has basically a page for every show we ever played with information about every show, and eventually, hopefully by the end of the year, we have about 250 shows up now. We're going to put every show up. It's not for free, if that's what you're wondering. We say $5, that's what we charge for our show. We think that seems reasonable. But if you don't want to pay $5, you can pay $1, or you can pay $100, I don't care. But not fucking free. And while we're on the subject of free, I'm just going to lay it out real quick. I'm all for sharing music. I have no problem with that. Every song I ever wrote, I wrote to be heard. So no problem. I like that. I like it. I like the idea that people are interested enough to listen to the music. People share. People send me music. I don't pay for everything. There's no issue there. I'm totally fine with that. There's one thing that everyone should keep in mind. If nobody wants to pay, you have to be prepared to deal with two realities. One reality is that you're going to start having advertising suffused into whatever you're listening to, because that's what's going to happen. It's going to be sponsored music, and that's going to be sick. Or, if that doesn't happen, have fun with the past, because the only music that can be free is music that is already made. And if people are like, we're not going to pay for music anymore, well, that's great. You enjoy the past. But it's impossible to make music now without money. I would recommend everybody become patrons of the arts to a small degree. Spend $5. That job is for $10. Do it. But I don't have a real issue about it. Well, I do have a real issue with it. Because I think people say, fuck that, we shouldn't pay. Well, fuck you. But I think that like, we talked about this for a long time, like, for guys, when we did this site, everyone's like, just put it up for free. Like, and I was like, but we spent like $40,000 doing this. So why can't people help us? Like, help us, like, we're losing money on this project. And I think, I say, give people an opportunity to support the project. Like, why not? So we say $5, we think it's funny. But you'll see there's a pull down menu. And also the other thing is, and we all know this, as soon as one person has it, it's free, right? But so what? Support the bands. Does somebody have a question? Yes, ma'am.
It seems not more than often that family is not affiliated with punk, and I was wondering how you having your own family and raising a child has contributed to your own punk ideals and ethics.
What was the beginning of the question?
That it seems more so not often that we don't affiliate family with punk. We want to separate our family and punk. And like a lot of kids don't want to mesh the two.
I've never felt that way. But it depends on how you define punk, I guess. I don't know how you define punk, but I can tell you how I define punk. Do you know? What, are you raising your hand? Hold on. Yeah, there's 2 seats right here if people don't want to stand there. Does anybody want to sit right in the front? 2 seats right here. 1 seat right here. 2 seats right there. 2 seats right there. I'm sorry, there's people standing in the door. 2 right there. See? Usher. Here's my definition of punk, and then we can hear your definition. Do you want to hear yours first?
I was wondering about your childhood, just talking about kids, and I was I always used to be around them, and they would rather I lived alone.
Oh, I see.
And, you know,
Okay, well, let me.
I like that.
Yeah, but here's my definition of punk. For me, punk, it took me a long time to come around to this. I thought about it for a long time, because it's not music for me, and it's not a fashion. No, it's not a look, and it's not even really an attitude. It's the free space. And what I mean by that is when I first came across punk, I was looking for the counterculture, like the underground. I wanted to be like in the place where people were challenging conventional thinking about mainstream society, mainstream culture. And I found it in punk. I was like so relieved. I'd been looking for it for like a decade at that point. I was 17 years old. I kept thinking like, where's the cool stuff? And when I came across it, I remember like just thinking like, yes, all the freaks are here. And I felt like a freak. I just did not, and I think all of you can relate to this idea of being marginalized. You don't fit in or don't belong. Yeah, because you're fucking freaks. And and you want to be in a room with other freaks because you don't laugh at each other anymore, right? And you don't laugh at the other people. So for me, the idea of the free space was really that what happens in a free space is that new ideas are presented. And when I started seeing punk band, I was seeing things that I couldn't believe I had never seen before in my life. New ideas were being presented, and most people in straight society or in a world where like they're trying to make money or in show business would just laugh it out of the room. The first band I ever saw was the Cramps, and they fucking blew my mind. But do you think that in 1979, like major labels, they would just been like, just whoa, get the fuck out of here, you know? And I think that for me, it was like just seeing these new ideas. So my definition of punk is the free place where new ideas can be presented without being dictated by profit. That's it. It's very simple. So can a family be involved with that? Of course. Like I don't mean, and truth is, it doesn't always look like what we might think is punk. And people often tell me, I have a lot of people, I'm 50, right? I have a lot of motherfuckers who are 50 tell me, punk's dead. And I'm like, well, no, when did it die? When I stopped going to shows. And, I've always bristled at this because in 1979, when we first started like being punk rock kids, dudes were saying like, punk's dead, you're too late, you know, Sid Vicious wannabe, and I used to be so, like, I was infuriated by it. And I was like, how do you, like, why? Who are you? And I think, so when people say that today, I think that I still just don't agree. Punk will never die because it has always been here. As long as you have a culture, you'll have a counterculture.
So I have
Oh, she has a question.
but I think, like a lot of trauma is my desire for that expression. And so, if you have to live in the world, you haven't experienced, what you experienced, then I don't know, I just feel like, so I want to know like what your childhood was like.
Okay, I'll talk about, okay, I understand you got, we'll get there. I'll talk about my childhood in a second, right? Yes. I'm just telling you, I was talking about, all I was trying to do is discuss this idea of what I think punk is, and I'll tell you about the childhood thing in a second. So I feel like it can never die. That's just how I look at it, and I think that it will always be morphing. That's why I think for like a lot of people today, they say, well, they relate to punk, but it's so not. you have to understand it's so different always, because every generation has their own. Every day we have a new backdrop, like a new landscape, because the world is always constantly changing. So the question is, like, if you just don't fit in, then who are you with? And that's all. And so I think punk is folk. Like, I think folk is punk, and jazz is punk, rock and roll is punk, hip hop is punk. I think all these things, the various art movements, it's just punk. It's just to be the other. That's all, to be other. So I feel really at peace with that. And so I think within families, I feel like they can be the other together. And the kid, who knows? Like, I have a 4-year-old kid. Who knows what will happen to him? I'm not expecting him to, like, don't you dare grow your hair. Or, it's like, he can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. My parents, you ready? Are you prepared? Okay, listen up. My parents, I used to always say, my parents are extremely supportive of me, and I didn't realize that was code for they paid for things. I didn't ever think about this, because my parents never paid for anything with me. I didn't go to college because I didn't have any money to go to college, and I thought to go to college meant to enter into indentured slavery. Like, taking out loans meant you had to pay it back when you had to get a job. And I was like, fuck that, I'm not doing it. My dad was like, you want to go? He wanted me to go to college. I said, I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Plus, I was a punk. And at that time, punk and college were seriously opposites, right? They were like, those two things didn't go together at all. My family I think they always, in my experience with my parents, they were like, follow your heart, like, do what's right for you. They never made me feel shitty for not, doing more proper things. My parents were like, yeah, if you want to play music, do what you want to do. So I feel like they were extremely supportive. My family was a left-wing family. I grew up in Washington, D.C. They were like civil rights people. They were anti-war people. They were, women's rights people. There was a lot of activity in Washington at that time. A lot of craziness was going on. There was a lot of course, protests, anti-war protests. This is late 60s, early 70s. My father and mother, we went to a church called St. Stephen's in the Incarnation. It was an Episcopalian church. It was a liberation theology joint that was super radical. Had a gay marriage in 1974. I remember it well. Wayne Schwant and John Fortunato. We had a woman say Mass long before it was okay. The priest there, William Mint, was almost excommunicated from the church for allowing this to happen. Black Panthers were regularly around. Stokely Carmichael spoke there. We had rock bands play. They pulled the pews out. We sat on the floor. It was just a very radical church. And that's the environment in which I was raised. Which the idea, and my takeaway was, like, question authority, don't trust the government. Doesn't mean that they're always wrong, but they probably are. And it's more true today than ever, So I think that was the environment in which I was raised. And I think also, like, I really saw the connection between rock and roll and, like, the protest movement. And I was so moved. I really felt like there was, like, something about defining. I mean, I always loved music, so there was something really defining about that music and how people were gathering around it, and then there were, these huge protests, and so in the 70s, suddenly it all just went away, and that's when I was really searching for something that made sense to me, because when I was in high school, rebellion you had two options for rebellion, like, you actually had one option, like self-destruction. Like, everybody I knew was like a rebel were just basically the stoners. That's what they were. That was like, fuck society, I'm going to destroy myself. And I thought that seems crazy, that rebellion, that your only option is to actually destroy yourself, when I feel like maybe it would be more rebellious to keep yourself together and push back against the powers that make people want to destroy themselves. Seems straightforward to me. So I never got involved with drugs, never drank, and became sort of in my high school, they called me group conscience. Could I go to a party and to make you feel bad, And I was like, that was seriously their issue, not mine. I'm just a human being. I'm just in the room with you. And then, of course, when I got into punk, when I saw all these freaks, I thought, this is perfect. Totally perfect, because these are people who are deviants. And I'm also a deviant. I felt like a serious deviant in high school because I felt like I was like one of 5 people who didn't get high. And I was like, oh, and so I went to this, and I was like, great, like we're all freaks. It was weird though, because it turned out that a lot of them were also like not in, like the punks, some of the older punks were like, what are you guys, like you're fundamentalist Christians or something? Like, no, we're just, we're freaks like you. So I started, I talked about it. I wrote a song called I Drink Milk. I thought it was funny. I drink milk, I drink milk. The idea that everyone else was like, let's get some beer. Like, I drink milk. It was just being silly. But the thing was, at that time, at the beginning of punk rock, like for me, like we would just wear crazy clothes and then elicit reaction. So when you would look slightly silly, and then some guys try to beat the shit out of you for looking slightly, like, wearing like children's sunglasses, and then 4 guys want to pound you in the head, then you think, well, this is clearly working. And you're like, so then you just start to follow, you pull that thread, right? You just start to think about, like, you understand, I think what you're tapping into was like this deep hatred of the other that exists in our culture. And once you start to recognize that, then you want to align yourself with the other more and more deeply. So it started to ratchet up, and then eventually I wrote the song Straight Edge, which was a furthering of this conversation. And then years later, that idea was picked up by people who heard it as sort of a movement, which I was never involved with. I had nothing to do with it. I will tell you about how it developed if you want to hear that. Yes, no? Okay. I've told this story before, but I will tell you this story. I wrote the song. It was about an individual's right to live his or her life the way they wanted to. Because all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be myself, and I felt like people were like, you're bumming me out, or you should do that, or like, we're gonna get you high. And I remember like people would say, we're gonna tie you to a tree and get you high. I'm like, what the fuck? I just seriously just want to be here with you. I'm sorry that my presence is so upsetting. And if you look at the lyrics to Straight Edge, the first line is, I'm a person just like you. It's kind of benevolent, like open when you think about it. I'm saying, we are the same person. I have better things to do. Like, that's how I felt about it. I don't want to like just sit around and destroy myself. That's all. And it was a very straightforward thing. It was aggro, no doubt. I was fucking angry about angry people. So I was singing about it, and I was giving it direct. I had this idea in Minor Threat to be as fucking direct as possible. Short, to the point, no bullshit. Because I thought that in some way would make it very difficult for people to misinterpret my words. This is not the case. And it's something, how could you have to also, it's very important for you all to consider this. When I wrote that song, I was writing that song to like this many people right here. It never occurred to me, ever in my life, when I was 18 years old, that I'd be standing in front of like 200 people in Seattle in 32 years discussing this. It never would occur to me, anyone outside, I didn't think I'd ever even necessarily have a record. We were just writing this. I just wrote a song to my friends I was like, when you're in high school, like you're arguing with your friends. So I'm like, I'm gonna fucking write a song, I was basically singing to people. I know who I'm singing to in this song. It just was beyond I could never imagine that this would have been a dialogue that would have gone, certainly, outside of my school, much less outside of Washington, much less outside of, out of the United States. It's just an idea that just went off on its own. So at the time I was very, just being very direct with people and having a conversation with them. At some point that conversation came back, and I was like, I'm going to be so declarative. I wrote two more songs, In My Eyes, where I discussed exactly what my issues were, like what I thought about different things. And then I wrote a song called Out of Step, and the song was very direct. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't fuck, at least I can fucking think. I'm out of step with the world. That is basically the entire song. And I was playing with words. I felt very deliberate in this. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't fuck, but at least I can fucking think. That last line qualifies the first three. I'm talking about myself, that I don't do these things. And because I'm saying, but at least I can fucking think. But many people heard it as three directives, saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. I mean, furthermore, the word that really tripped people up was the word fuck. That's what freaks people out. They're like, the dude doesn't want to have sex. But no one ever questioned, like, the intake of fluid, right? Like, drink, don't drink. Drinking, it's like, watch. Just, you can blog about this. So for me, fuck was a word very carefully picked about predatory sex. It was like people who were just fucking only to fuck, and were like not interested. Like, we're just abusing people, and it just seemed like I just don't do that. I'm not interested in that. So it didn't occur to me these lyrics would be perceived like this. There's a lot of arguments in the band about it. They were like, that's too hard. I'm like, fuck yeah, it's hard. Eventually, though, people picked up on it. It spread around. And at some point, it developed into what people think of as a movement. Now, here's my take on the movement. 99% of people who identify as or with straight edge, I think are just trying to do the right thing in their own lives. And I think that they are totally cool. And no issue. I think there is a percentage, 1%, maybe a little larger over the years. This is not a huge problem now, I don't think, but in the past it certainly has been, where people have become very violent in the name of straight edge. But I submit that those people do not have issues with sobriety. They have issues with violence. And I think that people who have deep toxic infestation, like in their belly, and they feel like they've abused people who have to abuse, are looking for anything in the world to trigger this violence, to get it out of their system, because it's killing them. This is why you find them so involved with gangs, because there's a moral code, like, we are we and you are you. We kill you because we're we. And it's very simple. Nations, like this, you're on the other side of this line that doesn't exist, so I'm going to kill you. Religion, think about it, so simple. Like, I believe in this particular weird fictional thing, and you believe in that particular weird fictional thing, and I'm going to kill you. These lines become easy triggers. So if you have something like straight edge, if you think of it as a series of rules, they're very simple concepts, and if you think of them that way, and therefore easy to break. And then people are lined up, say, okay, some people are like, if you step over that line, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. But those people, almost everyone, and I'm sure some of you have known people who were like that, and I bet you, first off, they're not straight edge anymore, because, like, I knew so many really, forever straight edge dudes who were stomping people in the head, who later on were like, I am a hardcore evangelical Christian, or I sell drugs, just people. It's just so. I mean, it's weird for me because now we're talking about many generations of this. So, I can tell you stories like Fugazi would play in towns, and these hardcore, super hardcore, straight edge vegan dudes would follow us to see what we were eating. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! And they'd stand outside the restaurant. It's okay. No cheese on that. It's cool. I remember we came out of this health food store, and this guy was out there, and he's a big, scary dude. And he says, yo, what's up? So why don't you get any vegan songs? What? Why don't you get any vegan songs? And Guy says, none of our songs eat animal products. They're all vegan socks. But you have to remember, it's so, this shit is so surreal. This is the thing I think many people don't understand about, like, you can look back, it is so surreal, but that same guy, him and his crew were terrorists. For real. Like, there was a situation in that town with that crew in which one of the girlfriends of one of the dudes got involved with one of the other dudes. The one dude who had got the cheating guy, he had to have a tattoo of an apology. Like, he had to get an apology tattoo, right? The woman was hounded and driven out of the town. These guys were savage. They were fucking gnarly. And we can look back and laugh about it now, but at that time, that's what was like happening. It's so surreal, but it was just something to contend with. You just had to deal with it. And over the years, there's been any number of situations like that. And I can remember a situation where skinhead kids would like you're wearing a red shirt right now, right? Okay, and you have one. Anybody else have a red shirt on? I have kind of a red shirt on. You guys back there, we would be killed by this one skinhead gang because they were like, that's a communist thing. And I saw it. I saw them chase a guy in the red shirt and beat him to the ground. I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, fucking communist. I'm like, it's a fucking t-shirt, man. Like, anyway, so, does anybody have a question? Let's get going. That was fast. Okay.
How can like I or we as consumers go to like a record store or somehow combat these record labels that are charging $18 a CD? And I mean, I know you do.
How can you as a record buyer combat record labels that are charging $18 for a CD? Let me think. Don't fucking buy them. Does anybody have a question? Oh, come on. I mean, that's the whole point. Like, when I got into punk, I turned the fucking radio off forever. And if somebody's charging $18, it's clearly like, unless it's like, I don't know, makes a nice package. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, what is it you're looking for here?
A lot of my friends go to like Walmart and get CDs, or they'll rip them off of Pirate Bay or whatever. And I'm like, you guys, I mean, if you like the band's music enough to listen to it or go to those lengths to get it, why don't you just buy their CD from a record store or not steal it? I mean, I guess what you're saying earlier.
I don't mind stealing. That's what I was saying earlier. I don't mind it. I mean, to me, it's music, so I feel like, I hear what you're saying, but it's too hard, the question is too tricky, because like we're sitting in Seattle, so you have nice record stores, and you can go find a nice record at a nice record store. There are many people who live in places where there is no record store, there might be a Walmart, right? Or there's no record store at all, and they might just take it off the internet. Who knows? I think it's so, like, we're talking about such a vast, crazy country and world that I think it's an access. In some ways, I think the internet is incredible. There are definitely things I've looked for in my life. Like, for a long time, I've heard about some weird, obscure record. I'm like, God, I wish I could at least hear it. And then one day I was like, wait a minute. Like, I have fucking internet, Like, I'll find that thing. And I did. I was so happy. Because to me, that's a miracle of it. It's a resource in a way that I'm so happy about. I mean, you talk to a guy, like, I'm a Jimi Hendrix, I had an obsession with him. And I have, someone recently gave me 40 gigs of Hendrix bootlegs, right? 40 gigs of Hendrix bootlegs. That's a lot. I'll never listen to these things. But I was so happy to have them. And I think that there's something miraculous about, the way the music can be, just shared like that. So I'm for it. My issue, what I was talking about earlier, was just this idea that, at some point, people are going to have to come to grips with the reality of what's going to happen to new bands or bands who are making music now. That's all. But in terms of labels that are charging $18, whatever, that's if you feel like it's worth $18, buy it. I mean, how much do you pay to see a movie? 10 to 12 bucks, right? To watch a fucking piece of plastic go in front of a light bulb for 2 hours, right? Somebody have a question back there? Yes, sir.
I don't want to beat the subject to the ground, but referenced like when you wrote the straight edge song, and then later on in life, maybe 10 years later, when things got really intense.
Yeah.
There's a gap there where you're an 18-year-old kid in your bedroom writing this song, and then maybe like a year or two later, where it already has taken off, and you were still involved in Minor Threat at a certain point, and you put out the SSDLP, the first one.
Yeah.
Obviously a very like straight edge record.
Yep.
What was it like for you when you realized that it was more than just some goofy song you wrote in your bedroom, and that it was like turning into this movement? There's Boston Crew now. There's all this other shit going on.
It was really incredible because what was happening was it was not the straight edge thing was an aspect of it. I mean, this is the thing you have to understand. Like, Minor Threat was not a straight edge band. We were a punk band. We were a hardcore punk band. We called ourselves hardcore punks. And the concept was that new wave people were like, like listening to B-52s and wearing like skinny ties. Punk rock guys were like junky Sid Vicious clones. And we were like, we're hardcore punks. Like, we don't need to be goofy or like self-destructive. We're like these kids who are just want to make music for like our own people, like our own other kids, and to connect with them. So Minor Threat we never identified as a straight edge band. It didn't exist. We were just a punk band, a hardcore punk band. And when we started connecting with other kids in the country, there was the Boston thing we showed SSD Control, like Alper Isle and those guys. There was Kevin Seconds and 7 Seconds out in Reno, Nevada. There was the Necros, the people like in Maumee and Detroit, that area, the Midwest. Like this was incredible for us. And yet it's worth noting, and this is not like back in the day, but there, we were writing letters and talking on the telephone. That's how you communicate with each other. And there were people like Kevin Seconds, for instance, who sang for 7 Seconds in Reno. I talked to that guy, wrote letters and talked to that guy for so long. I didn't meet him for like maybe 2 years. I remember the first day I met Kevin Seconds. Minor Threat was on tour. We drove. Check out this tour, just for you an idea of the way the punk map looked in our head. This is 1982. Our first show was in Boston, right? Our second show was in Detroit. It was in Lansing, Michigan. And then Detroit. We played the Freezer Theater. Our next show was in Reno, Nevada. That was the punk map. Like, it was like, okay, next scene, next like-minded scene. And we drove, it was I-80 into Reno, and all I had was a phone number for Kevin. He lived at his mom's house. And we pulled off the exit. We got into Reno. We pulled off the exit. We saw a Denny's. And we pulled into Denny's, and we sat down. We've been driving all night. It's a long drive, Detroit to Reno, long. And we've been driving. So we pull in, and we're just sitting, and we get breakfast, and I go to the payphone, because no cell phones, right? So I call up Kevin's number, and I'm like, hey, we're here. He's like, okay, I'll run down there right now. Okay, cool. So I sit down by this big window and look up, and there's like the highway, and then there's a road kind of going up the hill, and there's like a bunch of like low, kind of crappy looking apartment buildings. And we're sitting there, and we're looking out the window, and I'm just looking, it's like early in the morning, like 7 or something, and there's some cars out, and there's a dude jogging, and just like looking around, and the dude is jogging and coming down the hill, and I'm looking, and the dude's getting closer, and he's wearing boots, and I'm like, what the hell, what? And it was Kevin running from his mother's house down the hill to Denny's. And he comes like, hey, all right, you guys are here. This is like how tiny this thing was. Like it was so, just to meet him and to actually like connect with him, that was the way it was. So it was incredibly exciting. And it wasn't just the fact that they were like straight edge people. They weren't. There were plenty of people who were not straight edge. They were just kids. And we just wanted desperately to connect with the other kids. I mean, Minor Threat's first US tour for real was 1981. We did a tour. We booked this tour with Minor Threat and the DC Youth Brigade. And we had Tommy Clinton, the guitar player of the Youth Brigade, borrowed his parents' van, right? They had like one of those kind of, I don't know what you call it, like a van with like a little kitchen in it and a small, what do you call it? It was not an RV. It was a camper van, but like a small van, like not a big van. And we had that, and we had Brian Baker's mom's Volvo station wagon, and I had a 1970 Duster, right? That's what we were touring in. And those two bands, and then I think 6 or 7 like 14-year-old kids, friends of ours, like my brother came, and like all these people just came with us because we needed an audience, and we drove. Our first show was when we drove up to Maumee, where the Necros lived, and we hung out like probably for like 2 days. And I think our first show was in Chicago at a place called O'Banion's, and the Necros came with us. And we got to O'Banion's, and the show was 21 and up. It had never occurred to us that such a thing could happen. Like what? Like none of us are 21. No, like it was 19. I was 19 at the time, and they were like, yeah, I mean, that's 21 and up. And we're like, fuck that. But we were like, arguing with them, and they were like, we're not gonna let your friends can't come in. So we kind of huddled, we discussed it, and said, all right, here's what we're gonna do. Like, all you guys, okay, stand right here in the street, right by this door. Just line up. As soon as you hear the first note, get ready. So we start the song, I just run over and hit the emergency exit, and they just come running in, right? And we just had this quick show, and then that was the end of Chicago. Then we went to Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, Wisconsin, we played with a band called the Bloody Mattresses. That was a good gig. That was crazy. We played a place called Merlin's on the 2nd floor, I remember it well. And met all these really cool Madison, Wisconsin kids. They ended up being kids from this band, Tar Babies. They're really amazing people. They lived in an old dentist office, and they each had their own room with little sinks. And there's a thing, have you ever heard the term government cheese? You know what that is? They were like, because they're in Wisconsin, they had like a refrigerator filled with government cheese, just giant blocks of cheese, and we sat there eating cheese. So fucking sick when I think about it. Our next show, I think, was supposed to be San Francisco, right? But then Tommy Clinton's mom called and said, what is going on? And he's like, what? And she's like, bring the van back, or we're not going to pay for college. So they went back, and that was into the tour. Meyer Threat stayed, and we went up to play. We played in Windsor, Canada. We played with the Necros and borrowed their gear, and we went home with our tail between our legs. And then we broke up because Lyle went to college. But then we reformed, and that's how we continued playing. Did that answer your question at all? No? What do you want to know? I don't.
That like really fucked with your head.
Did it fuck with my head?
Like the first time you.
No, I was psyched. I fucking loved meeting people. Nothing. My head does not really get fucked. I have to be honest with you. It's like. The only thing that's fucked with my head, really, I'll tell you, in all my performing stuff and the time I've been on, I have zero stage fright. Okay, that's one thing I should tell you. I've never been scared or nervous to go on a stage ever. I just don't. I just like, yeah, we're here. Okay, I'm fine. But there's been periods of time where I played in front of audiences that have elements that are very scary people. So like when you play a show and you have 20 to 30 white power Nazi skinheads Zig Heiling and like destroying people, and you're gonna go on the stage knowing that your band is responsible for this gathering, that kind of fucks your head a little bit. And people often, this is not an issue anymore, but for years people said, oh, you want to run everything, you have control issues, you're telling people not to jump off stage on a slam dance, and fuck you, don't tell us what to do, you're no fun, all this stuff. But the truth is, when you play in front of people and someone gets permanently disfigured because they came to see your band, it fucking sucks. And the people who lose their ability to walk are not the people jumping off the stage. They're the people who are getting jumped on. And that sucks. And they're usually the people in the front row who also, by the way, are your biggest fans. And they don't walk again. And you think about it, it's just a fucking band. And the dudes who are jumping are just gonna be like some real estate agent in about 2 years, right? But right now, like, don't fuck with my right to fucking jump off the stage. Fuck you and your right. I don't care about that. Like, I don't serve dinner to people who are stabbing my other guests. I just don't do it, right? It just seems like it's such an obvious concept. It seems so real to me, and I don't know why it became, people were like, I don't fuck Fugazi, that fucking Ian MacKaye dude, you know, but I don't care. And it bothers me that people got hurt at my shows. That fucked with my head a little bit. And there was one show I remember in Germany where to get to the stage, it was like 15 minutes, there was so many people, it was like a room smaller than this, like 1,000 people in it. And we finally got on the stage, and the people in the front were screaming, because they were being crushed against it. Like there was like the stage was this high, and they were being crushed. And they're and we hadn't even started playing yet. And I tuned my guitar, and it was a push in the back, and the people were like, and it was like, and I thought, what's gonna happen if we play this song? They're gonna be cut in half, you know? I mean, and the truth is, like, you know, like this, people die at shows, and it's so weird when you think about that. So there are moments like that where I got a little bit tripped out. But in terms of all the kind of energy, like starting to grow, it just made sense because I didn't think of myself as like a leader. I just thought of myself like, yeah, we're in a fucking band, and like there's like SSD Control and 7 Seconds and Black Flag and the Circle Jerks and the Necros and all these bands. Like it was just great. It was incredible to be for kids. Like really, for kind of the first time for like kids to be forming their own bands, writing their own songs, putting on their own shows, putting their own fanzines, setting up these networks, like these tour networks, something completely under the radar. I don't know if it ever happened before. There's no managers, I'll tell you that. There was not a single manager that I can think of. I mean, maybe the Dead Kennedys had a manager, but they were kind of a big band. The rest of us, we just call people up, like, hey, you want to do a show? It was so straightforward. That just seemed, and I never had a manager. I never had a lawyer. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
So how did you guys start getting stuff like overseas? Like you didn't manage yourself, so how did it spread across the ocean?
Well, there's punks over there. I mean, people, I think there's import. We used to buy records from England, and I think the people over there started getting interested. I don't know. I mean, Minor Threat never thought about going over because it just seemed impossible. It wasn't until Fugazi that I ever went over there to play. I had been to England once with Black Flag in 1981, and that was a very extremely weird experience because they were so savage, the British. But I don't know. It just, how do we do that? I don't know. I write a song that people want to hear. I don't know. I don't know what happened. But I can tell you that, well, here's what I can tell you. In 1980, well, I have to back it up a little bit. Minor Threat puts out of Step, right? It's a 12-inch. We make our biggest pressing ever, 3,500 copies. It sells out before it gets back from the record plant, like that many pre-orders. At that time, we had no credit with the record plants, meaning we had to pay like COD. So all the money we had to pay for this pressing. Then the distributors buy it and they never pay us. They take like 6 months. So you can see there's a cash flow problem. We're broke anyway. I worked 3 jobs at this time. I went to the movie theater tearing tickets, I went to the ice cream store, and I was driving a newspaper truck, right? So we had a big cash flow problem. Then, because the Minor Threat thing had sold out so quick, there's such a demand for it, we're like, we got to repress. But meanwhile, there's a band called Faith in DC that want their record to come out, and they're waiting. And I'm like, well, so do we make the money we get back, do we use that to put out the Faith record, or do we use that to put out the repressing of Minor? It's just getting complicated. In the middle of all that, this guy named John Loder came over from England. He worked with Crass, and he had a company called Southern, and he was really interested in putting out the record in England. He liked Minor Threat, and he was interested in distributing in England. So we said, well, wait a minute, could you make like an extra 1,000 copies and send them to us because we're broke and we need to figure out how to do this. And he agreed. And it ended up that he could get it made so cheaply there that even with the shipping, we could still sell it. We sold this record for, I think they were $350 for the 12-inch. That's what the original price was, $350. And that just started a relationship that lasted for 25 years. So I think that probably is, in terms of the actual, like, how do our records start getting around the world, it was really this partnership with John Loder, because he was kind of a genius. I mean, it's very weird when you get to the point where you have like Fugazi. When we put out, say, Kill Taker, we sold like 200,000 copies of that record like in a year or something crazy like that. And the ability to do that that takes some serious know-how. And I mean, had Southern not been involved, I can't imagine that we could have been able to do that. I mean, so I think that that relationship was pretty incredible. Now, John died about 7 years ago, and it's sort of things are obviously, now I'm psyched, right? You sell 1,000 records, I'm very happy. But it's never made a difference to me. Like, honestly, tonight, like, if this room held like 1,000 people, I'd be like, oh, let's not do this, If it held 50 people, I'd be bummed because there's more than 50 people. I don't care what the number is. I just want it to make sense. Like, I could talk to 50 people or 5,000 people. I don't care. As long as the room makes sense and the economics make sense. So for me to sell 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, I just don't care. As long as that's how many people want to hear it. You may have heard me say this before, but do you know what you call a record that doesn't get listened to? A piece of fucking trash. That's what it is. And a lot of people will make like 10,000 records or 1,000 records and sell 100. That means 900 pieces of trash. I think the world has enough for that. So I've always just tried to think like, hey, how many people want to hear this? Okay, that's how many we'll make. If I make 1,000, 1,000 people want to buy it, we're good. If more people want it, I'll make some more. But I'm never concerned about it beyond that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. Sound person.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about Rites of Spring and how you met Guy? And I'm just curious, like, that Rites of Spring record is like a big favorite. And were you as excited when you first saw them? Like, oh my God, I don't know, stuff like that?
Yeah. He's asking about Rites of Spring. It's Guy Picciotto. I first met Guy in 1981. There's two schools in DC. There's Wilson High School, which is a public school, and there's Georgetown Day School, which is a private school. And they both had like these very serious punk crews in them. And the Meyer Threat, like Jeff and I went to Wilson, but Brian and Lyle went to GDS. And SOA, which was Henry Garfield, Henry Rollins, his first band, like those three guys in that band basically went to GDS. So there was this whole clique. And SOA had like a guy ran with him, this guy named Guy. That's the first time I met him in Georgetown. I remember him well. He had like, I think he had bleached blonde hair and like masking tape wrapped around his head or something. And he was a weird fucking kid. And he's a little younger than me. He's 3 years younger than me. But when I think I met him when I was 19, so he was 16 at the time. So it was sort of like, that's a little guy. Then there was a band called Deadline that came out of mostly Wilson guys, and Guy was really tight with them. And he loved Faith, which was my brother's band. Which also, Faith, it's very incestuous because Faith was two of the members from SOA. And then my brother started saying, when Henry left to join Black Flag, my brother joined with the people from SOA and they made Faith. So Guy liked Faith and he was really with them in Deadline. And then when Deadline broke up, Brendan was a drummer of Deadline. See, it gets very, I have to tell you, it's not like I saw Rites of Spring and like, oh my God, there's a good band. Like, we were so intertwined at this point that by the time Rites of Spring started playing, they practiced in my basement. I knew them really well. I think Rites of Spring was one of the greatest fucking bands of all time. Their shows were phenomenal. They've been, I think, a little bit trivialized because there's this rap about everyone crying at the shows. that's apocryphal. It's a little nonsense. It's a bit, there were people who were upset, I'm sure. There were people who've gotten emotional, but whatever. But they were actually just a great, insane band. I think quite ahead of their time. And I thought their shows were phenomenal. And I was kind of their roadie. So I saw every one of their shows except for one in Detroit, where they played with Sonic Youth. And the other one, I was in England. And I remember they played Food for Thought. And I called them, this little club in DC, and I called them right before they went on stage. Have a good show. I was very tight with those guys. And actually, this is not a plant, but we are actually getting ready to release our first demo. We're going to put it out this in November. We're going to put out a 10-inch for the first demo. Finally, they've agreed to do it. I've been asking them for like 10 years to do it. It's kind of an incredible document. In 1984, when they first formed, they were practicing, and then the bass player, Mike Fellows, decided he was going to go move to California, so they're breaking up. So they decided to go in and just document like these songs they had written with no intention of releasing it. So we made this tape, and then Mike left, and that was the end of it. Mike came back, and they started playing again, and then we did their album. So that demo just sort of sat there for years. And I finally was like, I'd love to put that out. So it's going to come out in a couple of months. But I can't say that I saw, we were all intertwined always. I mean, they were always my people, always. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. What do you make of, I don't know if you're familiar with what now is being called crowd-funded projects as it relates to putting out albums. Like, what do you make of this?
I don't know what to make of that. I mean, like, sort of the Kickstarter, that kind of stuff?
Right, yeah.
Oh, sorry, what do you make of crowd-funded? I mean, sometimes it seems like a good idea. Sometimes it seems a little weird to me, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I have to say I'm not particularly judgmental about stuff. I think, okay. I mean, I have my feelings about certain things. Like, I think Facebook is a gated community. That's what I think. And people think, you're fucked. I'm like, okay. But the way I look at it is that if you're not in the community, you don't hear about shit. And I know that because I'm not in the community.
But is it still, I guess just real quick as a follow-up, is it still worth like a new band? There's the crowdfunded thing has been really successful for a lot of like really small bands. Is it still worth, you think, like going out and trying to find a small label, put it out versus doing that? What do you see?
I don't think whatever. I don't know. I don't think it's bad. I think it's kind of a great idea. If there's a band, like for instance, there are bands I know who I think are great, and there have been bands who have written to me like, hey, we're good, we're trying to put a record out. Would you kick in $15? Sure. I'm totally up for that. I think there's some bands who are just trying to make a record and they need help. I think it's a great idea. I just think it's weird that if it's the only idea. I mean, here's what I think every band should do is write music that they are serious about. And try to write songs that people want to hear, or that they want to hear that appeals to people. That's all. That's it. And then once you get to that point, it seems weird. Documentation seems to have gotten ahead of itself. Like Minor Threat played for. We played for over a year before our first record came out. Fugazi played for a year. We toured the entire United States and Europe with no record. And all we were just like, our idea was, I mean, from my sense, this is how I look at it as a record label owner. Like for me, the idea of putting out records was to document something that has happened, not to document something to make it happen. It's an inversion, but I think that we exist in a record industry world where people think the record is like the point. But I don't think that. Like, you hear people talk about touring and say, well, are you going to tour behind this record? Are you going to be touring it? I would never think that the tour would be supporting a record. It's so backwards to me. For me, the record supports the tour. The idea is that you give people, like Fugazi to say, the record is the menu, the show's the meal. Like the idea is you get an idea of the music from the record. When you see the show, then you're like, fuck yeah, I get it, So it's all an inversion. But this is for me, the idea of records, like with bands, the early bands, DC bands, these bands are so great. They had these people come see them, like, let's take a picture of that. Let's document this. And but now it's very difficult because people are really eager to get, they think like, well, okay, we're a band. We gotta put a record out. They haven't played a show yet. I think, come on, play a show. Get something, make something happen. But in terms of, I just don't know. I think that whatever works, hook or by crook, really. I think that I can't imagine, I just don't know if I was not alive at a time. We were not alive, we had there was no option that someone was gonna pay for anything. Have you done it?
No, I know, I have friends in bands that have done it, and it seems like a lot of them are really successful. They get a lot of money right away. So I was wondering if you're in a small
Has anybody done it here? No? You done it?
My band didn't want to do it because we felt like it was begging.
Interesting. Has anybody given money to a crowdsourced record? Did you get the record?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah.
You're happy? It's a good idea. That's it. That's it, right? That's the, a friend of mine was working on a movie. I gave him some money. Like, fuck it, why not? I kind of like the idea. I do think it's a little weird when, and this might be specific to me, but I get a lot of those things. People are like, no, God, help me, I'm starting doing this. It's so many, it's just crazy. It's too many outstretched hands. But also I just feel like money, if you're just gonna give money away, then maybe give it to people who are really fucking need some money, like something to eat. Somebody on this side, yes ma'am.
First of all, I am a huge fan and have been a huge fan for about 20 years. And
Thanks.
glad to be my 100th rep.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
I recently started doing some music writing, and I interviewed my first band last week. And I was thinking of like the worst questions, the most cliche questions. So what is the worst, most important question, and what is the best question?
She says she's doing music writing, and she had interviewed her first band last week, and she started thinking like, what's the worst question she could ask, and what's the best question? And she asked me if I could comment from my experience, what I think the worst and best. I remember one interview where it was in England very early on. The Fugazi guy said, "So what do you want to talk about?" I think at that point, the idea of like the band was supposed to tell them what to write, and I was like, well, nothing. And we sort of sat there for a while. There are some people who've interviewed me who are just really. I just don't like people being fucking snarky, like just trying to get over it. I just don't like that. They want to fight, then they're gonna get into it. Like, I just don't like that. I remember one interview where this guy had stayed at our house, at Discord house, as a guest. And then on a radio interview, he brought up something that was in one of my housemates' room that he took issue with, right? He brought it up and was like, how can you justify like the fact that you live in a house with a guy who has this particular thing in this room? Now that's bad etiquette. And I was like, fuck you. And I made this guy cry on the radio. Like, I was very angry with him. Because that's just not cool. Like, he's a guest. And like, it's not my, it's like you don't take inside knowledge and then like spring it on somebody. That was upsetting. I think the best questions for me is when you feel like the person really is interested. Like I don't like email interviews. I'll tell you that right now. I don't like them. I don't do them because I didn't do homework, and I sure as fuck am not going to start now. Like they're like, I first was in a band. I never did that. I don't like top 10 lists and top 5. I'm not interested. I don't think like my brain does not organize things that way. I get so many like, what are your top 5 new releases or what's your 5 favorite records? I just don't think like that. Because I don't have 5. I have like 5,000 or something, and they float around. And so I also feel like those kind of list things, I feel like they've been shaped by the internet. because everything is lists, So I think that in some ways it's kind of got people into this idea of like top 10 every goddamn thing in the world. But it's only because that's the way the internet works. It's all binary. It's all numbers. I make them, just I think about that sometimes. So I think that I can't give you, those are my answers. I don't really know. I mean, I think that mostly if you're interviewing people, be interested. That seems fair enough, doesn't it? I mean, I like doing interviews. I like talking to people. And I like answering questions. But I really like answering questions where I feel like the person is actually happy to talk with me. But they're like, I've done interviews where the guys are like, so, okay, when did you guys form? It's not even like just like, okay, and so what so what do you think you're gonna be in 5 years? I just don't want to answer your questions. Yes.
I was wondering about, you keep mentioning feeling connected with people and enjoying to connect with people and finding people who are of kin, and working with them with zines or just distributing music, just sharing experiences. I was wondering what it's like in being in a position where you're making music and trying to document what's going on with you and your friends, and when you feel like, possibly this would happen more with a band like Fugazi that's larger, but what it's like for what you feel like aren't of the kin trying to push in at you, like people trying to manage you or book shows for you, or large labels possibly trying to connect with you. So if you enjoy kind of connecting with people you can relate to, what is it like to try to resist the people who seem to be coming in from the outside who you can't relate to as much?
She's saying that she has been picking up that I like being a punk, basically. Being connected or within a community or a scene. And then when you have a band like Fugazi, for instance, that gets larger, then you have people who are coming from outside that scene who are then attracted to the popularity of the band, and then they want to, and then you have to interact with them. And how does it feel? Is that the question? Or
how does it feel, or also just how do you resist? Yeah, how do
you resist it?
If you want to,
yeah.
I guess. If you're interested in sharing what you have with your friends and with close people, what's it like to, I guess, connect with essentially strangers who want more profit, who are on a different page, I guess, who want a different goal?
Well, Fugazi came out, we were punk kids. So from our point of view, we'd always had just done stuff with our friends, and like Minor Threat, we just would call people. And same in the beginning of Fugazi, I just called my friends and, hey, we're gonna come to this town, you put a show on. That's not where we wanted to be. As the band got more and more popular, we would still call our friends or call kids in different towns and say, but at some point people started getting freaked out because the shows were getting too big. And then we started to realize that it was a problem. We started to get into some very sketchy situations. You can't have 1,000 people show up at a place that holds 300 people. It just could get really messy. So at some point we made a decision that we were going to have to think about how we're going to perform, how we're going to present music, and that meant finding rooms that were that made sense, that were safe. Because really, this is the truth. You just didn't want people getting killed or injured. And some places where it's not. We did a show in a garage, a parking garage. That was very unsafe. The thing was falling down. We had situations where floors would collapse. It's just not a good situation. And also, even worse, is that shows started getting shut down by the cops. It's very hard to keep 1,000 capacity show quiet, and so we started doing shows with clubs, bigger clubs. Now, Fugazi, of course, we had our basic things we believed in. All shows had to be all ages, always. So a lot of that put a lot of rooms right out of the mix. Because a lot of clubs, the bigger clubs, were not going to do that, but some would. I think our position was, once we decided either we're going to work with kids who we can really see eye to eye with, or we're going to work with people the straight world and we're going to make them work our way. And it's just a way of flexing. It's like we had muscle, so we used that muscle to create environments in which we felt comfortable enough to play. That's all we ever did. Like the whole point of like the $5 show and the way we had our lights and everything about it, like the all ages thing, is that we were trying to make a situation that was as comfortable as possible for everybody, because that's how we wanted to feel too. Like this evening, even for me, like I'm just trying to do something that is like comfortable, so I can feel like comfortable talking with you all. And so the same way with Fugazi, all we want to do is get everything set so that we could hit the stage and just do our thing. That's what we wanted to do. And we felt like by minding our P's and Q's and thinking about things, thinking about like the safety of the audience, and we thought about it a lot. And as we got bigger, it got more and more complicated because we were playing much bigger rooms. And then in the early 1990s, when this fucking city sprung that grunge crap on us, no, I'm not joking. What happened then was, in some ways, like in the beginning of Fugazi, we had a lot of skinhead problems because it was everywhere in the country there were skinhead gangs. So we spent a lot of time contending with those people, and it was hard. We had some very scary situations, but we were like, okay, we will deal with them. We need to make these sort of situations safe. We'll confront them. We're not going to play music while they're fighting people. You know, we just did we did our thing. But in the 90s, when they started making these rock videos for all these bands, they always showed people crowd surfing. And that created something that was almost more fucked up, because it was like this mindless behavior. And check this out. I mean, if I bore you, just say stop. But I think this is really interesting about the way the economics of these fucking gigs. This is what happened. So we're doing shows, we're getting to bigger rooms, and we're trying to keep our tour price low, $5. Now, the economy of rock and roll is so tripped out. There's so many things that people are trying to make money on. So you're just the whole time like, well, we don't need a lighting designer. We don't need someone. We don't need a trip. We don't need food backstage. We'll carry our own gear. We're just trying to keep the prices down so we can keep the door price low. So then we start getting these huge crowds, but then crowd surfing breaks out. And like in the early punk days, people would jump on the stage and then jump into the crowd, and the crowd was like, "Yay, we're gonna catch you!" But and then there was a period of time where, "Yeah, we're not gonna catch you." But then crowd surfing, people were coming from behind, so people were being launched up from behind, and the guys, almost always guys, would come from the back of the room towards the stage. The idea they were going to get on the stage and then do like that and jump into the crowd. So this caused problems with the bands and the management, so they decided to put a barricade in, right? Because a barricade would create a moat in which the people coming from the back of the room couldn't get to the stage. The barricade costs money. It costs a lot of money. They're not cheap, those things. For one night, it would be $400 or something, right, to rent the stage. The problem is the barricade. So if you have a barricade in front of the stage, it creates a moat, and so the people are coming forward and they're dropping down to the ground and getting injured. So then they had to hire security. So you had to pay 2 to 3 people to stand in the front and catch people. Now, if someone gets injured, they will sue the club. So the security has to be bonded. So it becomes even more expensive. This is insane what is going on here, right? Then people are coming from behind. The people who are in the front row are like this. Someone from behind, they take their head and pull it over that way. That's a neck injury. So then those are lawsuits. So then you have to get more insurance in the club. In California, we were blackballed as a band that was the insurance. We had to pay a special premium for insurance because if people got injured at our shows, because people were crowd surfing, even though we're saying, don't crowd surf, don't do it, please stop that, please don't do that, and yet they could not do it because they'd seen it on television. And it was this epidemic everywhere in the fucking world. This happened, crowd surfing. And then they created another barricade that was called a T barricade, right? So it was like this, and then it went down the middle. And the idea was to break up the pit, right? But now you need 20 security. We did a show in Chicago at a club called the Aragon. It's a big room, it holds 5,000 people. We had 3,900 people at that show. It's a big show. We made less money than the barricade. We made less money than the security. We made less money than the forklift driver. Because the fucking expenses were so high. And it was sick. That's why you're paying $25 for a show or $50 or whatever the fuck it is now, because it just kept going up. And from my point of view, it was insane, and I was always interested in like saying, no barricade, no crowd surfing, let's bring it back to this. Let's just bring it to let people take care of themselves. Because I saw the economics of it all. So the idea was working within the system, like either you work with your people or you work within the system and you bring it to your way, you convert it to your way. I mean, there were plenty of labels who approached us, but the thing is, they only approached us because there was money in the air. And we came from punk rock, so we knew that was just not interesting to us. I think that Fugazi very early on decided, like, there are so many stories that begin with, like, they did it their way. And then they always did, like, and then they didn't. And we always thought, like, how about at the end of Fugazi it said, they fucking did it their way. And just let that be the end. All the way. I mean, how many other bands do that? Not many. Because it just became insane. Usually bands they usually sign because they're about to break up. This is the truth. Because they don't know what to do anymore. Like, fuck, this sucks. Let's break up. I don't know, let's sign. And that's just a bummer. How depressing. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, totally.
All right. Okay. Yes, sir. Back to the hat.
What's your favorite record on Discord and why?
My favorite record. What did I just tell you about this shit? I'm not gonna answer that question. Yes, sir. Did you ask me a question already? Yeah.
No, not yet.
Okay. Let's do it.
As somebody who's been such a staple in punk rock, specifically like straight edge hardcore, what is your opinion of someone, a kid who's in that sort of scene that either broke edge or never was at all? Not to beat a dead horse, right?
I don't. The term broke edge is so alien to me. I just don't think like that. I've never was straight edge. I wrote a song called Straight Edge. I think I said earlier, like, for me, straight edge is like, when I wrote this song, it was about a person's right to live his or her life the way they wanted to. So if somebody wants to use a drug, that's their right. If they don't want to use a drug, that's their right too. I actually am not judgmental about that. It's a real fallacy. I think people really have this idea that I'm like this, like yeah, I used to slap beers out of people's hands. I never slapped a beer out of somebody's hand. It's just not true. I mean, maybe I was dancing like a Black Flag show and I bumped into a guy and spilled his beer. And he's like, fuck it, just wait till the internet is invented. But this idea of like people, like there's a website called like Edge Breaking or Edge, I don't forget what it's called now. It's so Nazi. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, this dude used to claim edge, now he broke edge. It's like, what is this? Like, what are people doing with their time? Like, go get a broom and clean up trash or something and help the world, you know? Stop ratting out your stupid friends. That's what I think about that. Yes, sir. Yeah.
What do you think about, can you talk about how Discord got involved with Spotify and how you're liking that deal so far?
How Discord get involved with Spotify and how do I feel about it? I don't know what to make of that one. And it's interesting. Spotify was originally in Europe, and we were working with a guy who oversees, like, okay.
Wait, what's Spotify? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I can't answer that. Yes, sir. Answer that.
So it's a subscription service where you can stream music by mostly pretty much any band, and like there's royalty system, but I'm not.
Right. It's a website. It's like a website. It's a music delivery system that's on the internet, and it's basically you stream. You can listen to anything. If you're a member, a subscriber, you can basically listen to anything for free, or you have a premium.
There's a subscription.
If you don't want to look at ads.
Why does he care, dude?
What's that?
Why does he care? Like, music's all over the internet. Like,
Well, I think it's a good question, because it's an interesting. I think what he's asking is an interesting question, and here's why. Spotify, iTunes sells downloads. So truth is, iTunes is we make so much money from the iTunes. Like, that's by far the largest digital service. Like, they pay so much money, it's crazy. Like, they actually pay. I don't know what to say. That's just the truth. There's other like e-music and people like that. They pay less because they have a different model. Like, this is what's so weird. Every different service has a totally different model on how they account. Why do we do these things? Because apparently that's what people want. I'm not a formatist. Like, I made records to begin with, and then at some point in time, every fucking kid in this country wanted cassette tapes. I mean, for real. Like, Repeater sold 120,000 cassettes. And I remember thinking, like, cassettes suck, you know? But everybody had a cassette deck. And then about 4 years later, everybody had a CD player. And we sold, and it was only CDs, no cassettes, no vinyl. And then everybody got a fucking little personal listening device, the PLD, which some of you call iPods. I call them PLDs. Because fuck Apple and their fucking names, everyone just supports them all the time. So, is anybody from Apple here? I've tried so many times, like, let's just call them PLDs, but it's not working. Anyway, check out my PLD. But I mean, let me ask you this question. How many people here listen to music on their PLDs? Come on, be honest. All right, so that's why the fuck we do all these different things. I'm not against it. It's like, these are services, that's what they want, so fair enough. I mean, if we only did it, that would be a problem. We still make vinyl, we don't make cassettes, sorry. But we make CDs, and we do these services. Then Spotify comes along, they're in Europe, and they have this whole new model, which is basically any song you ever wanted to hear in the world, you can listen to for free. And their revenue thing is based on, I guess, advertising. I don't know what the fuck they do, but they pay nothing at all. Like, iTunes pays for one song, they charge 99 cents, and I think we make like 69 cents for that. It's not bad.
Fuck Apple.
Right? Yeah, fuck Apple, but 69 cents. Actually, what makes me mad about Apple is like the fact that they just like, I hate their Apple on the front of their computers. I hate that. I couldn't take over mine. I bought it. Why do I have to advertise for it? I hate it. I hate most things like that though. That's why I don't like. If you pay for it, why do you have to advertise it? I just don't understand. So, Spotify, if one song, I don't know the actual figures, I'm gonna make a guess. 0.00009 cents a song. I mean, it's insane, like a tiny fraction of a penny per song, because it's streaming, and that's the way they pay. So we had a guy in Europe who's overseeing all these weird different internet digital services, and he would figure out how to account for each one, and he could put it together and then say, here's the accounting from Europe. So we had a deal with Spotify in Europe. Then Spotify US opened, and they're like, we want your catalog. And we're like, well, we'll talk about it. But we didn't talk about it, and they just took all their songs from Europe and just put them on anyway. And we said, well, we didn't talk about it. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry dude. You know, and I don't know, I just don't know what the fuck to make of it. I just don't know. But you know, whatever, it's the weather. And that's kind of the way I am with life. It's just the weather. I can't change it. Like, people say, what the fuck are you gonna do about the rain? Nothing. I'm gonna get an umbrella. So like with Spotify, all these things, they're just conditions that we're just gonna have to contend with. It's like, I live in Washington, D.C. My entire life I've lived there. And governments have come and gone. They are the weather. Like, when fucking George Bush was in office, that was like, that's the weather. It's gonna blow over. It did. You just had to wait. You just gotta wait it out. You know, when you're in a terrible situation, go in your house, make a cup of tea, just wait. Just wait. It's gonna pass. I'm not saying don't act. I'm just saying don't get depressed and think it's forever. But these situations, they're just weather for me. So I don't know what to make of Spotify. Does anybody here listen to Spotify? All right. Do you like it? Yes? No? That's
Yes.
pretty, wow. I don't know. I've not actually listened to it, so I don't. I remember one day when I told Brendan and Guy about it. Brendan was like, "You're kidding!" He took out his phone and he looked up. He's there in a band called Happy Go Licky, which is a pretty obscure band. He's like, "Fucking shit, Happy Go Licky's on Spotify." I'm so happy. So I guess it's a good thing. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Ian, you and I come from a time when politics was really entrenched in music. I've got a two-part question for you. What do you see modern time music's role in political activism? Secondly, we have a referendum coming up for vote in Washington State this November that will legalize gay marriage. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
For me, music and activism has always been deeply connected, whether the music is overtly political or not. I think music is something that is still unique in its power to bring people together. Though I'm not playing music right now, I think we could agree that music is why we are actually in this room at this moment. That's significant. One of the reasons I've always played music is I like the idea that there's like you create something and then people gather and are actually engaging in something now more than ever. Like that's, I think right now people, so much of our time is like people spend like in these like social network things that are in complete isolation. Whereas it's very difficult to really organize in this sense that when you feel connected, when you're with people, you kind of can connect with them and you feel so like, yeah, we're not, like there's a bunch of us here. So for me, music was always significant in terms of activism. And I can remember like seeing bands who were like, they would play a show and then there'd be like a protest and they would play and I was like, that is so perfect. Because that's like, that's the currency. Today, what do you mean, what do I think of it today? What does that mean? What do you mean?
I guess, do you see a role in political change that can be played by bands? I guess I
I
sound
think
like an old
yeah.
person, but I don't see as much.
Oh,